The first thing I noticed when I came home from the rehabilitation center was that my key no longer fit. I stood there on my own front step with a suitcase in one hand and a paper bag of medications in the other, pushing the key in gently, then harder, then turning it twice, as if the lock might remember me. It did not. I looked at the brass plate I had polished every spring for 26 years. Same number, same blue shutters. Same cracked flower pot near the porch rail where my husband once tried to grow tomatoes and failed magnificently. My house. And yet the lock had been changed. I wish I could tell you I shouted. That I pounded the door and demanded answers. That I became one of those women in films who suddenly discovers a hidden fire inside herself. But I was 68 years old, still walking with a cane after a stroke, my left hand weaker than it used to be, my speech only recently steady again. I was tired in a way healthy people do not understand, tired in the bones, tired in the mind, tired in the heart, so I simply stood there and stared. Then the front door opened. My son Daniel stepped out carrying a trash bag. He froze when he saw me. For one brief second before he arranged his face into concern, I saw something honest there. Not joy, not relief, alarm. "Mom," he said, "why didn't you call? We were going to pick you up tomorrow." Tomorrow. I had been discharged that morning. The hospital had called 3 days earlier with the exact date and hour. Daniel himself had spoken to the nurse, while I sat beside her. I remember because she had asked, "Will your family be ready for you?" And Daniel had smiled into the phone and said, "Of course." Now he stood in my doorway like a man surprised by his own lie. "I wanted to come home," I said. My voice still sounded different to me since the stroke. Slower, more deliberate, as if every word had to cross a river before reaching daylight. He glanced behind him. That glance told me more than any speech could have. Then a woman's voice floated from inside. "Daniel, who is it?" "My daughter-in-law, Melissa." She appeared in the hallway wearing my robe. My robe, the cream-colored one with the stitched collar my sister had given me 15 Christmases ago. She saw me, stopped, then smiled too quickly. "Oh. Eleanor, we thought you were coming tomorrow." There it was again, tomorrow. I looked past them. The entry table where I kept family photographs was gone. In its place stood a narrow black cabinet I had never seen before. The wallpaper in the hall had been painted white. My framed landscape had vanished. Even the smell was wrong. My house had always smelled faintly of cedar and lemon polish. Now it smelled like vanilla candles and someone else's detergent. "I'd like to come in," I said. Daniel stepped aside at once, almost theatrically. "Of course, Mom, don't be upset. We were trying to surprise you." People say many dangerous things in gentle voices. I entered slowly. The living room had been rearranged entirely. My blue sofa was gone. My husband's leather chair was gone. The piano bench my granddaughter used to hide under was gone. Large gray furniture now filled the room, sharp-edged and expensive-looking. Decorative books sat on the coffee table, none of them opened enough to have ever been read. The portrait of Harold and me from our 40th anniversary was missing from the mantel. In its place stood a mirror. I turned toward Daniel. "Where are my things?" He gave the sigh of a patient man dealing with an unreasonable child. "Mom, after the stroke, we had to think about safety. We made some updates." Updates. I had nearly died 6 weeks earlier. A blood vessel burst without warning while I was watering hydrangeas. I woke in a hospital bed, unable to lift my arm, unable to shape words, with strangers discussing me over fluorescent light. And while I fought to walk again, while I learned to button a shirt with clumsy fingers, my son had made updates. "My chair?" I asked quietly. Melissa laughed once, softly, as if I had asked about a spoon. "That old thing was impossible to clean." Daniel shot her a look, but too late. "And Harold's desk? We put it in storage." "Where?" "Mom," he spread his hands. "Why does that matter right now? You need rest." I had loved Daniel fiercely all his life. Even saying that now, after everything, remains true. I loved the boy who built crooked birdhouses with his father. I loved the teenager who failed algebra twice and cried in the garage because he thought he was stupid. I loved the young man who held my hand at Harold's funeral and said, "I'll take care of you now." Mothers are cursed with memory. We remember the child while standing in front of the grown man. "I'll go to my room," I said. No one moved. Something cold slid through me. Melissa folded her arms. "Well," she said, "about that." Daniel stepped closer. "Mom, don't make this difficult." Difficult? We moved into the master bedroom because it's on the main floor and easier to manage the house from there. "We set up a room for you upstairs." I stared at him. After my stroke, they had moved me upstairs. The staircase in my house curved sharply and had 14 narrow steps. I had fallen on those stairs once at 59 and bruised my ribs. Now they expected me to climb them with a cane and a half-numb leg. "I cannot use the upstairs room." "We bought railings," Melissa said brightly. I looked at her, then at Daniel. Then I understood something I should have understood sooner. This was not panic. Not temporary help, not family stepping in during crisis. This had been planned. Every painted wall, every moved object, every changed lock, every rehearsed sentence. They had not prepared my return. They had prepared my removal. "I want to see my documents," I said. Daniel blinked. "What documents?" "The deed, insurance papers, bank statements." "The file from Harold's desk." He smiled then, small and tired. "Mom, you really need to stop worrying about all that. I'm handling everything now." There are moments in life when truth does not arrive dramatically. No thunder, no music, just a simple sentence spoken casually by the wrong person. "I'm handling everything now." I looked at the hallway closet, the one place in the house no visitor ever noticed. Behind the coats, beneath the shelf, taped under the wooden lip, Harold had once hidden a second key and a sealed envelope. He had laughed when he showed me. "In case life gets foolish," he said. At the time, I thought he meant burglars. Standing in my altered home, staring at my son, I realized he had meant family. And suddenly, for the first time since the stroke, I did not feel weak. I felt awake. I set down my suitcase. "Daniel," I said calmly, "how long have you been living in my house?" He opened his mouth. Then someone knocked at the front door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Daniel turned pale. Melissa whispered, "You said she wasn't back until tomorrow." And I knew, before the door even opened, that whatever they had done while I was gone was larger than changed furniture. Much larger. The knocking came again, 3 measured taps, neither timid nor aggressive, the sound of someone who expected to be admitted. Daniel moved first. "I'll get it," he said too quickly. But I was already closer. My cane clicked across the hardwood floor as I crossed the hall. Melissa stepped sideways as if my slowness itself might delay whatever stood outside. Daniel reached for the handle before I did, then hesitated. That hesitation interested me. When people fear an ordinary visitor, there is usually an extraordinary reason. He opened the door only halfway. A man in a navy suit stood on the porch holding a leather folder. Mid-50s perhaps, clean-shaven, silver at the temples, polite eyes sharpened by long practice. Behind him sat a dark sedan at the curb. "Good afternoon," he said. "I'm looking for Mrs. Alina Whitmore." "I'm here," I answered. Daniel turned so sharply he nearly struck the door. The man looked past him, saw me, and gave the smallest nod. "Mrs. Whitmore, my name is Graham Pike. We spoke briefly on the telephone 3 weeks ago." I had no memory of him. Then I remembered the rehab center receptionist bringing me a cordless phone one rainy afternoon while Daniel was downstairs getting coffee. A man had asked how I was recovering. I assumed he was from insurance. I was exhausted, distracted, embarrassed by my own slow speech. He said he represented someone who wished to confirm my condition and would contact me again once I was home. I had forgotten the call entirely. "Yes," I said carefully. "I remember now," Daniel laughed once. "Mom gets confused sometimes. You should probably call another day." Mr. Pike did not even look at him. "Mrs. Whitmore, may I come in?" "I believe this concerns property transferred under emergency authority while you were hospitalized." Silence filled the hallway like smoke. Melissa's face drained of color. Daniel stepped onto the porch and pulled the door behind him, but I caught it with my cane before it closed. "No," I said. "He may come in." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Mom, please." "You don't understand what this is." "That may be true," I said, "but I intend to, Mr. Pike entered, removed his shoes without being asked, and stood neatly beside the black cabinet that had replaced my old table. He noticed everything in one glance. Men like that always do. "I apologize for the intrusion," he said. "I was informed you had not yet returned." Melissa spoke first. "Who informed you?" He looked at her politely. "I'm not at liberty to discuss private communications." She folded her arms harder. "I live here." He gave a brief pause that carried more meaning than a paragraph. "That is one of the matters requiring clarification." I almost smiled. Daniel moved toward me, lowering his voice. "Mom, this is exactly why we wanted to wait until tomorrow. You're tired. You need to sit down, let me handle this." He kept saying handle, as if I were a box, as if my life were luggage to be checked and moved. "No," I said. "You've handled enough, Mr. Pike opened his folder. "Mrs. Whitmore, 6 weeks ago, 2 days after your hospitalization, a durable emergency power of attorney was filed naming your son, Daniel Whitmore, as temporary financial agent due to your incapacity." I stared at Daniel. "I signed no such thing." He spread his hands. "You couldn't sign anything. You were unconscious. The doctor said decisions had to be made." Mr. Pike continued. "Temporary authority can be granted under certain circumstances, yes. However, several actions were then taken under that authority." He withdrew papers. "Your primary checking account was consolidated into a joint management account. 2 investment certificates were liquidated early. Your household contents were listed for appraisal. And an intent to sell notice was drafted regarding this residence." The room tipped sideways for a second, not from illness, from betrayal. "My house was for sale," Melissa jumped in. "It wasn't like that. We were exploring options. You can't live alone anymore." I looked at her robe, my robe, wrapped around her body like entitlement made cloth. "And you solved that by moving in before asking me?" She lifted her chin. "Someone had to." Daniel stepped between us. "Mom, listen to me. The rehab bills were huge. Repairs were needed. You have no idea how expensive care is. I paid this house off 19 years ago. That doesn't matter." It mattered. It mattered because Harold and I had skipped vacations, patched our own roof, bought used cars, and counted coins at the kitchen table so no one could ever tell us where to sleep. Mr. Pike cleared his throat. "There is more." Of course there was. "There were also attempts to access a trust instrument established by your late husband." Daniel's eyes flashed. "That trust affects me too." "Does it?" Mr. Pike asked mildly. I turned to Daniel. "You knew about the trust." He froze. "Harold and I had told no one details, only that our affairs were in order." Daniel had mocked us for years. "Trusts are for rich people," he once said, yet now he knew enough to chase it. "Mom," he said, softer now, "Dad wanted me protected." "Protected from what?" He said nothing. Mr. Pike closed the folder halfway. "I represent the bank holding certain sealed instructions attached to the trust. Those instructions activate only if Mrs. Whitmore is declared incompetent, relocated without consent, or if unauthorized sale activity occurs concerning the residence." Melissa actually took a step back. Daniel whispered one word. "No." I felt my pulse in my throat. Harold. Harold with his quiet habits and maddening caution. Harold who labeled extension cords and saved every receipt. Harold who always looked ordinary until the moment life required otherwise. "What instructions?" I asked. Mr. Pike met my eyes. "Those may only be opened in your presence, Mrs. Whitmore." Daniel lunged for the folder. "This is ridiculous." Mr. Pike moved it away effortlessly. "Touch me again, sir, and this becomes unpleasant." Daniel stopped. I had not seen him this rattled since he was 12 and broke a neighbor's window. Only then he had still known shame. Now he knew only panic. Melissa turned on him. "You told me the trust was simple. It was supposed to be. Supposed to be." Their marriage, I realized, was strongest only when facing outward. Under pressure, it cracked quickly. I lowered myself into the edge of the gray sofa that had replaced my own. It was uncomfortable. Somehow that insulted me more than anything else. "Read it," I said. Mr. Pike shook his head. "Not here. The documents are held at Carter and Bell Financial. We would need your identification and signature in person." Daniel laughed harshly. "She can barely walk." "I can walk enough," I said. He crouched in front of me then, trying tenderness. "Mom, please, you don't need lawyers and banks right now. You need family." There are lies so polished they almost resemble truth. I studied the face I had kissed goodnight thousands of times. Then I noticed something small. His wedding ring was gone, not removed forever perhaps. Maybe pawned, maybe sold, maybe simply absent. But men under pressure forget details. "How much money have you lost?" I asked. He recoiled as if slapped. Melissa snapped her head toward him. "What?" No answer. I asked again. "How much?" He stood up. "This is insane." Melissa's voice rose. "Daniel, how much?" He shouted then, not at her, not at me, but at the room itself. It was temporary, and there it was, debt. Gambling, business failure, something hungry enough to eat through a man's mother. Mr. Pike quietly gathered his papers. "Mrs. Whitmore, I strongly advise you not to remain here tonight until these matters are settled." Melissa stared at Daniel like a woman meeting a stranger. I looked toward the hallway closet. Behind coats, beneath shelf, taped under wood, the second key, the envelope. Harold had expected foolishness. He had simply underestimated the size of it. "I'll stay," I said. All three turned to me. "This is still my home." Then I rose, steadier than I had been in weeks, and pointed my cane at the staircase. "And before anyone tells me where I'm sleeping, I'd like to know what happened to my husband's desk." No one spoke, which meant the answer was worse than I imagined. No one answered because they were buying time. I had seen that silence before in children with broken lamps, in husbands hiding receipts, in neighbors pretending not to know who dented a parked car. Silence is rarely empty, it is usually crowded with excuses. "Daniel," I said, "where is the desk?" He rubbed both hands over his face. "It's in storage." "Where?" "A unit outside town." "What company?" "Mom, why are we doing this over furniture?" Because it was not furniture. Harold's desk was an old walnut roll-top he bought second-hand when Daniel was 10. It had scratches along the left side from moving houses twice, and one drawer always stuck in humid weather. Harold paid bills there, wrote letters there, balanced accounts there, and after he retired, spent long afternoons pretending to organize screws while really listening to baseball on a small radio. When he died, I sat at that desk for months because the room still felt warm when I entered it. People who steal objects often underestimate what they are taking. "It matters," I said. Melissa threw up her hands. "This is unbelievable. We've been carrying everything while you recover, and you're interrogating us about an ugly desk." I turned to her. "You are wearing my robe." She flushed crimson. The room went still. Then, for the first time since I came home, I saw uncertainty enter her eyes, not guilt. She was not built for guilt. But uncertainty. Bullies dislike being named plainly. Mr. Pike checked his watch. "Mrs. Whitmore, I can remain another 10 minutes if you need assistance." "I do," I said. "Please witness this conversation," Daniel scoffed. "This isn't court." "No," Mr. Pike replied, "but courts appreciate witnesses." Daniel looked as though he might explode. Instead, he grabbed his phone and stalked into the kitchen. I heard cabinets open and shut with unnecessary force. Melissa followed him, whispering sharply. Their voices rose, then fell when they remembered I was still there. I used the moment. I crossed to the hallway closet, opened it, and pushed aside coats I did not recognize. Melissa appeared instantly. "What are you doing?" "Looking in my closet. That's our storage area now. Our." I bent slowly, every movement deliberate, and slid my fingers under the wooden lip beneath the shelf. Dust, tape, paper. My heart struck once hard. Still there, I peeled the envelope free. Melissa stepped closer. "What is that?" "Something not meant for you." I tucked it into my cardigan pocket before she could react. Then I found the key beside it, still taped where Harold left it. Small brass, plain, anonymous. I closed my hand around it. Daniel re-entered. Mom, enough theatrics. I agree, I said. Where is the storage unit? He stared. No, Mr. Pike spoke mildly. If personal property was moved under temporary authority, refusal to disclose location could be interpreted poorly. Daniel glared at him. You people smell money. Mr. Pike smiled faintly. No, sir, we smell concealment. That almost made me laugh. Melissa moved closer to Daniel now, but not affectionately, strategically. I recognized the shift immediately. She was deciding whether to remain on his side. How much debt? She asked quietly. Not now. How much? Melissa. How much, Daniel? He looked at me then, not her. Tell him to leave. I said nothing. Tell him, he shouted. The sound bounced off walls I had painted with my own hands. He had raised his voice at me before, once or twice over the years, usually followed by apology. But never like this. Never as if I were the obstacle between him and something he deserved. You changed my locks, I said calmly. You sold my furniture, you tried to sell my house, and now you're shouting in my hallway. His face crumpled for a moment. There was still a little boy buried somewhere inside that man. I saw him flicker, frightened and ashamed. Then greed covered him again. I was fixing everything, he said. For whom? No answer. Melissa stepped back from him entirely. How much debt? She repeated. He laughed bitterly. Credit cards, business loan. Some tax penalties. How much? 218,000. She inhaled sharply. I did not move. Numbers can stun, but they also clarify. This was not a rough patch. This was collapse. You said 40, she whispered. That was before. Before what? Before the market turned. What market? He did not answer because there are many names for gambling now, investing, trading. Opportunity, I knew enough. Melissa looked at me, and for the first time she seemed less victorious daughter-in-law than frightened woman tied to a sinking man. You knew, she asked me. No, I said. But I suspected hunger. Mr. Pike closed his folder. Mrs. Whitmore, if you choose, I can arrange a locksmith and temporary accommodation tonight. No, Daniel barked a laugh. You hear that? She needs me. I did not say that. I removed the brass key from my pocket and held it up. Harold always said never reveal all your tools too early, but some moments deserve timing. Daniel frowned. What is that? A key. To what? We'll find out. I took my cane, handbag, medications, and the envelope from my pocket. Then I walked to the front door. Where are you going? Daniel demanded. To see my husband's desk. You can't drive. I can call a car. It's evening. I noticed. Melissa spoke suddenly. I'm coming. Daniel turned on her. You're taking her side. I'm taking the side with facts. He stepped toward her. She stepped away. Interesting. Men who gamble often assume everyone around them is wagering too. Mr. Pike opened the door for me. I'll accompany you, he said. Daniel blocked the threshold. No one is going anywhere. He was taller than I remembered. Funny how suns keep growing in your mind long after they stop. I looked up at him. When you were 7, I said, you stole $3 from my purse and cried for an hour before admitting it. His jaw tightened. When you were 16, you lied about denting Mr. Hargrove's truck and confessed before supper. Mom, you were not raised to become this. For 1 second, his eyes filled, then emptied. Dad always liked you better, he said. There it was. Not money, not debt, not even desperation. The old poison beneath all the newer ones. Harold was steady, practical, hard to impress. Daniel mistook discipline for rejection. Some children carry imagined slights like heirlooms. Your father loved you, I said. He trusted you. No, I replied. He trusted behavior. That landed. He moved aside. Sometimes truth can do what force cannot. We stepped onto the porch. The evening air smelled of rain and cut grass. I had not stood outside my own home as a free woman in weeks, and suddenly the sky looked enormous. Mr. Pike guided me carefully to the sedan. As I lowered myself into the seat, Daniel called out behind us. If you leave now, don't come back tonight. I turned. The porch light illuminated the changed lock on my own front door. Then I smiled. Daniel, I said, by tomorrow morning you may be the one leaving. We drove into the dark. Halfway down the street, I opened Harold's envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a single folded page in his handwriting, and one sentence at the top made me grip the seat so hard my hand ached. If Daniel ever touches the house, open drawer 7 first. I read the sentence 3 times before the words settled into meaning. Harold's handwriting had always looked patient. Even warnings from him appeared calm. If Daniel ever touches the house, open drawer 7 first. Below that line were 2 addresses, a storage unit number, and the name of a locksmith I did not recognize. At the bottom he had written, "Trust your memory before you trust tears." I closed my eyes. For years I had teased Harold about preparing for disasters that never came. He kept duplicate records, labeled spare keys, stored copies of insurance forms in sealed envelopes, and once spent an entire Saturday photographing every room in the house for documentation. I called it fussing. Now, riding through town with my son trying to strip my life behind me, I called it love. Mr. Pike glanced in the rearview mirror. "Are you all right?" "No," I said honestly. "But I am becoming interested." That drew the smallest smile from him. The storage facility sat near the industrial edge of town, behind a chain-link fence and rows of roll-up doors washed in pale security lights. It smelled of concrete, dust, and wet pavement. The manager knew Mr. Pike by name. That told me this was not his first family emergency. We signed in. My hand shook slightly as I wrote, but the letters remained legible. Progress. Unit C14. Mr. Pike unlocked the metal door and lifted it halfway before stepping aside. Inside, beneath a hanging bulb, stood my husband's desk. The sight of it struck harder than I expected. There was the nick on the right corner from Daniel's toy truck. There was the ring stain from Harold's coffee mug he swore never happened. There was the brass handle I polished every autumn. Someone had shoved boxes against it carelessly. My chest tightened. I walked forward and laid my hand on the wood. "Hello," I whispered. "Grief is strange. It can sleep for years, then wake because of a drawer handle." Mr. Pike remained respectfully near the entrance. "Take your time." "No," I said. "Tonight I've taken enough time." The roll top opened with a familiar rasp. Inside were neatly stacked folders, envelopes, pens arranged by size because Harold had been quietly impossible. I counted drawers. 1, 2, 3, my fingers moved faster. 7. The 7th drawer was the small lower left one that used to jam in humid weather. It opened smoothly. Harold had repaired it. Inside lay a sealed packet marked only with my name, and beneath it, a digital recorder. Old-fashioned, silver, battery-operated. I looked at Mr. Pike. He nodded once. "Open the packet first." Inside were copies of the deed, bank summaries, trust registration, and a notarized letter dated 3 years earlier. My breath caught. 3 years, long before my stroke. Long before any crisis. Harold had anticipated Daniel might one day try something. I unfolded the letter. "Eleanor, if you are reading this, then one of 2 things has happened. Either I have become dramatically more paranoid than usual, or our son has mistaken kindness for weakness. If it is the second, do not protect him from consequences. We protected him too often already. Everything required to secure the house and trust is enclosed. Mr. Pike has instructions. Use them. And before you pity him, listen to the recorder." I sat down on the folding chair beside the desk because my knees no longer trusted me. Mr. Pike handed me the recorder. "There are headphones if you'd prefer privacy." "No," I said. "If Harold wanted a witness, he may have one." I pressed play. Static crackled. Then Harold's voice filled the unit, older than I remembered, softer, but unmistakably Harold. "If this recording is being played, then I was right about something unpleasant." My throat closed. He continued. "Daniel came to see me today. He thinks I don't understand finances anymore because I ask him to repeat himself. This is useful." Mr. Pike lowered his eyes. I listened, frozen. He wanted access to investment accounts. Said he had a short-term opportunity. Needed collateral, became angry when I refused. A pause, paper rustling. He also asked what happens to the house when your mother is alone. I gripped the recorder harder. I told him the house remains hers. He said she won't manage long. Another pause. I am making this record because I saw something in his face I have not seen before. Not desperation. Entitlement. Tears slid down my cheeks before I noticed them. Harold had seen it, years ago, and carried it alone. If you hear this, Aliner, know two things. First, I loved you every day, including the irritating ones. Second, if our son chooses greed, do not confuse blood with innocence. The recording clicked off. I could not breathe for several seconds. Mr. Pike waited in silence. Finally, I said, "How long have you known?" "He retained our firm after that meeting," Pike replied. "We established protective triggers, reviewed title status, and updated trust clauses. He never told me. He said you loved peace. He preferred to carry worry himself." That sounded exactly like Harold, and it made me furious. At him, at myself, at the whole noble stupidity of marriage sometimes. I wiped my face. "What can be done tonight?" Mr. Pike became all business. "Several things. First, the house deed remains solely yours. No sale can proceed without your verified consent. The intent notice filed by your son can be challenged immediately. Second, temporary authority can be revoked at once given your competence. Third, if funds were misused, we can freeze further access and seek recovery. And them, that depends on what you want." I looked at the desk, at the folders. At the years Harold spent preparing quietly while I believed our life ordinary. "I want my house back. Then we begin now." He produced forms from his folder as if conjured. I signed revocation documents, account freezes, occupancy notices, and emergency legal directives. My signature looked slower than before the stroke, but stronger than it had in weeks. When we finished, Pike made 3 calls in 10 minutes, a locksmith, a banking officer, and someone he addressed as Judge Warren's clerk. Connections matter. Harold had always known useful people while pretending not to. By the time we left the storage unit, rain had started. "Where will I sleep?" I asked. "The guest suite at Carter and Bell, if acceptable," Pike said. "Private and secure." "No," he looked surprised. "I'm going home. It may be confrontational. I raised a son, I survived a stroke. I buried a husband, I can survive confrontation." We returned just after 10. My porch light was still on. Through the front window, I saw silhouettes moving sharply room to room. Searching. Good. Let them search. The locksmith's van already sat at the curb. Daniel opened the door before we reached it. His face was flushed with anger and fear. "You took files from storage?" "No," I said. "I retrieved my property." "You had no right." I almost laughed. Mr. Pike stepped forward and handed him an envelope. "You have been served notice that emergency authority is revoked effective immediately." Daniel did not take it. The locksmith tucked it into his shirt pocket. Melissa appeared behind him holding a suitcase. "Mine." She set it beside the door and would not meet my eyes. Interesting again. "Melissa leaving?" I asked. "She's overreacting," Daniel snapped. She spoke without looking at him. "You told me your father promised you everything." "He did." "No," I said. "He promised you chances, you wasted them." Melissa finally met my gaze. "I'm sorry about the robe." It was such a small apology for such a large trespass that I nearly admired it. "Keep it," I said. "It no longer fits me." Daniel stepped toward me. "You can't do this to your own son." I lifted my cane slightly. "Watch me." Then I turned to the locksmith. "Please change every lock." Daniel's mouth fell open. "This is my house too." "No," I said. "It was your temptation." He lunged past us toward the driveway, perhaps for his car, perhaps simply fleeing humiliation. But before he reached the steps, 2 police officers approached through the rain. Mr. Pike had made more than 3 calls. One officer addressed Daniel by name. "Sir, we need to discuss reported unauthorized financial activity and disputed occupancy." Daniel stopped cold. For the first time all night, he looked young again. Not innocent, just unprepared. I stepped inside my house while officers spoke to my son in the rain. The vanilla candles still burned. I blew them out one by one. The house sounded different after midnight. Not quieter, hollow. For weeks it had held the noise of strangers pretending to belong there, cabinets opening without permission, shoes crossing floors with no memory of who laid them, voices making plans in rooms built by other hands. Now there was only rain against the windows and the soft movements of professionals undoing damage. The locksmith worked steadily through the front hall, replacing cylinders, testing keys, making notes. One officer remained outside with Daniel. The other took statements at my dining table, though it was no longer my table. Some glass monstrosity with chrome legs sat where Harold's oak table once stood. I signed another form. Mrs. Whitmore, the officer said gently, do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight? Yes, I answered. Here. He nodded as if he had expected nothing else. Melissa descended the staircase carrying 2 suitcases and a garment bag. She had changed into street clothes and looked 10 years older than when I arrived. I'm leaving, she said. I considered telling her she should have left weeks ago. Instead I said, that seems wise. She glanced toward the porch where Daniel argued in low, frantic bursts. I didn't know everything. You knew enough, she swallowed. Yes. That honesty, late as it was, counted for something small. She hesitated. The desk was his idea, she said. He said there were documents inside. I know. He searched it before moving it. My pulse sharpened. And he couldn't find what he wanted. Of course he could not. Harold had spent a lifetime letting foolish men underestimate him. Melissa looked around the room as if only now realizing she would never control it. I really am sorry. For the robe or the house, she flinched. Then she rolled her suitcase through the hall and out into the rain. I watched from the doorway as she loaded her car herself. Daniel shouted something after her. She ignored him and drove away. Interesting how quickly partnerships dissolve when profit disappears. The officer returned inside. Your son would like to speak with you privately. No, he says it's urgent. Then he may be urgent somewhere else. The officer almost smiled. A few minutes later, Daniel entered anyway. Wet hair plastered to his forehead, shirt half untucked, eyes red. He looked less like a villain than a tired man whose lies had outrun him. Please, he said. The officer remained in sight near the kitchen. Mr. Pike stood by the mantel reviewing papers. I appreciated both men more than I could express. Daniel lowered his voice. I need you to tell them it was a misunderstanding. It was not. Mom, no, you don't understand what happens if charges are filed. I looked at him carefully. For years I had confused needing help with deserving rescue. That confusion ends expensive. What happened to the money? I asked. He stared at the floor. Some investments failed. How much was investment? Silence. How much was gambling? His jaw tightened. A little. How much? Enough. There are people who answer with fog because truth would choke them. You took from me, I said. From accounts your father built while working nights. From savings I made stretching grocery money. You took from a woman learning to walk again. Tears formed instantly. Daniel had always been able to cry quickly. As a child it seemed tenderness. As a man it became a tool. I was going to pay it back. With what? The sale. The sale of my home. It would have solved everything. No, I said quietly. It would have fed everything. He sank into a chair and covered his face. For one dangerous second, pity touched me. Then I remembered the changed lock. Pity without memory is how people get robbed twice. I'm still your son, he whispered. Yes. Then help me. I already did for 42 years. He looked up sharply. That's cruel. No. Cruel was sending me upstairs after a stroke. His mouth opened and closed. No defense for that one. The officer approached. Sir, we need to continue outside. Daniel stood but did not move. You always chose Dad. There it was again, old hunger in a grown man's voice. Your father chose discipline, I said. I chose excuses. That is why we are here. He stared at me with something close to hatred. Then he walked out. The front door closed behind him. I did not collapse. I expected to. Instead, I felt strangely light. Mr. Pike set down his folder. You did well. I did late. Late is often the only available time. He asked practical questions then. Did I know where jewelry was stored? Had any prescription cards gone missing? Were there spare keys elsewhere? Did Daniel know passwords? Had mail been redirected? Each question revealed another doorway through which damage enters. We checked the office first. Harold's room had become some kind of modern workspace with 2 monitors and a ring light. His books were boxed in the corner. Family albums stacked beneath extension cords. His framed military photograph leaned backward against the wall. I touched the frame. "Animals," I murmured. Mr. Pike politely pretended not to hear. The safe behind the closet panel remained intact. Daniel had never known about it. Inside were passports, bonds, old letters, and a velvet pouch with my grandmother's earrings, untouched. That steadied me more than I expected. We moved room by room. Kitchen drawers reorganized into nonsense. My linen cupboard filled with Melissa's scented products. Garage shelves cleared for gym equipment. My bedroom transformed into a gray showroom without one trace of me. That room hurt most. The bedspread gone. Harold's watch tray gone. My reading lamp gone. Even the indentation on my side of the mattress replaced by something expensive and soulless. I stood in the doorway for a long time. "Would you like help restoring it?" Pike asked. "Tomorrow, because some grief requires daylight." By 2 a.m, the officers had left. Daniel was gone with them, though not arrested yet. "Interviews first," they said. "Financial review." Documentation. Consequences move slower than anger but farther. The locksmith handed me 3 new keys. "Only these exist now, ma'am." I took them carefully. 3 little pieces of metal worth more than jewelry tonight. When everyone finally left, the house became mine again and strange at the same time. I made tea in a kettle Melissa had apparently bought because mine was missing. I hated the kettle on sight. I carried the mug to the back porch and sat wrapped in a blanket. Rain had stopped. My garden, neglected for weeks, bowed under water and weeds. The hydrangeas I collapsed beside after the stroke had overgrown wildly. I could still see the place where neighbors found me. Life leaves marks even after it continues. I thought of Harold's recording. "Do not protect him from consequences." For years after Harold died, Daniel visited more often when bills were due, when rent was late, when some temporary setback needed bridging. I called it family support. Harold called it pattern. I had resented him for being hard. Now I understood he was trying to spare me this night. I whispered into the dark, "You were right." Then, because marriage allows honesty after death, I added, "And I hate that." Somewhere near dawn, I slept on the sofa because I could not bear that false bedroom upstairs. At 8:15, the doorbell rang. 3 measured knocks would have prepared me. The bell did not. I opened the door to find a woman in a tailored coat, silver hair pinned neatly, carrying a bakery box and a folder. She looked at me once and smiled. "You must be a leaner." "I'm Judge Warren," I blinked. "The clerk said you might need breakfast." I had imagined judges differently, sterner perhaps, taller, more carved from marble. Judge Warren looked like a woman who could run a church fundraiser, dismiss nonsense in 3 syllables, and bake something dangerous with butter. She held up the bakery box. "Cinnamon rolls." Bribery is unethical in court but acceptable on porches. I stepped aside at once. "Please come in." She entered, surveyed the living room in one sweep, and set the box on the chrome table with visible disapproval. "This furniture has no soul," she said. I liked her immediately. "I'm told you know Mr. Pike," I said. "For 20 years," she replied. "He sends me impossible people and tidy paperwork." She removed gloves, accepted tea, and sat as if she had every right to occupy any chair on earth. "I am not here in an official judicial capacity," she said. "I'm here because Harold Whitmore once helped my husband when no one else would." That surprised me. Harold never mentioned it. Of course not, good men often hide their best deeds. She opened her folder. "I also happen to know enough about elder exploitation to recognize it when I smell it." The word exploitation landed heavily. Until then I had thought in softer terms: misunderstanding, pressure. Bad choices, family trouble. Predators survive inside those softer words. Judge Warren continued, "Your son has not yet been charged with anything." But if records support unauthorized transfers, coercive occupancy, or attempted fraudulent sale, matters may become serious. I nodded. I don't want revenge. Excellent, she said. Revenge is noisy and expensive. Consequences are cleaner. She asked clear questions, the kind that strip confusion from events. Who changed the locks? Who redirected mail? Who contacted doctors? Who moved furniture? Who managed medications? Who had access to cards and passwords? Each answer built a structure I had refused to see. This was not one desperate act. It was a campaign. When we finished, she slid the folder closed. You need 3 things now: security, documentation, boundaries. I'm not sure I know how to do the last one. You will learn. Pain is an efficient teacher. We ate cinnamon rolls at my stolen table while planning my recovery like generals over maps. By noon, Pike returned with 2 movers, an accountant, and a woman named Teresa who specialized in senior transition support. Though she quickly informed me she mostly specialized in spotting liars. I liked her too. The house transformed over the next 2 days. Gray furniture removed. My blue sofa returned from storage. Harold's chair restored to its corner. Dining table brought back and polished. Family photographs rehung. My kettle found in a garage box. Even my robe returned by courier with no note from Melissa. I donated it. Some things carry too much borrowed skin. The bank froze disputed accounts pending review. Automatic withdrawals were halted. Credit cards linked to my name were canceled. Passwords changed. Mail rerouted properly. I learned more in 48 hours about my own finances than in the previous 10 years. Widowhood can tempt a woman to surrender practical matters. I do not recommend it. Daniel called 19 times the first day. I answered none. Then came messages. Please call me. They're overreacting. You know I'd never hurt you. Melissa left. I need help. Then anger. You're humiliating me. Dad poisoned you against me. This is all Pike's doing. Then sorrow again. I'm sorry, I made mistakes. Please, Mom. Patterns repeat because they once worked. This time they did not. On the 3rd morning, I met with investigators from the bank and a financial crimes unit. Not dramatic men in dark suits, just patient people with spreadsheets and exact voices. They traced transfers, loan applications, online access attempts, and forged digital confirmations. My son had grown careless near the end. Desperation speeds mistakes. There were casino withdrawals 2 counties away, trading platform deposits, luxury purchases returned weeks later for cash, and one payment that chilled me most. A deposit to a residential care placement consultant. He had not only planned to move me out, he had priced where to put me. I excused myself to the bathroom and was sick. Teresa waited outside the door when I emerged. Breathe, she said. I raised him. You raised a boy, she replied. Choices raise the rest. I carried that sentence for weeks. 3 days later, Daniel appeared at the gate despite written notice not to. I saw him through the kitchen window before he rang. He looked thinner already. Crisis eats vanity first. I stepped outside but did not open the gate. Mom, Daniel, I just want to talk. You have talked constantly. He gripped the bars. They're treating me like a criminal. Are you one? I made mistakes. That is not an answer. His eyes filled again. They froze everything. My accounts, lines of credit. I can't pay the lawyer. You should have considered that before financing one with my house. He flinched. I was drowning. You invited water. He shook his head. You don't understand pressure. I almost laughed. I was widowed at 62. I buried both parents in 1 year. I worked nights while caring for your father after surgery. I learned to walk again at 68. I stepped closer. Do not lecture me about pressure. He began crying in earnest then. The old reflex in me stirred. Comfort him, feed him, save him. I let it rise and pass. What do you want? I asked. Tell them not to prosecute. There it is, he stared. I knew there was a destination hidden inside all this emotion. It's not like that. It is exactly like that. He dropped his voice. If they charge me, I'll lose everything. You already did. I turned toward the house. He shouted after me. You'll die alone. The words struck hard because cruel sons know where mothers bruise. I turned back slowly. No, I said. I nearly died surrounded by people using me. There are worse forms of company. Then I walked inside and locked the gate. He never came back in person. Weeks passed. The garden revived first. I hired 2 local students to clear weeds, then worked beside them as strength returned. My left hand remained clumsy but stubborn. Hydrangeas were cut back. Soil turned, seeds planted. Healing prefers tasks. Neighbors visited more often once truth spread. Apparently many had seen movers, new cars, Daniel barking instructions, Melissa hosting brunches on my patio. No one wanted to interfere. People often mistake silence for respect when it is really fear of awkwardness. Judge Warren came on Sundays with pastries and gossip unsuitable for official records. Teresa taught me online banking, document storage, and how to say no without explanation. Mr. Pike finalized legal protections that no future illness could exploit. And one bright Thursday afternoon, a letter arrived. Daniel had accepted a plea arrangement involving restitution, fraud admissions, supervised repayment, and mandatory treatment for gambling disorder. Jail avoided, but record permanent. I read it twice, then set it down. No triumph came, only quiet. That night I carried Harold's recorder to the porch. I didn't save him, I said aloud. Wind moved through the hedges. Somewhere in memory, Harold answered exactly as expected. You were never supposed to. Months later, on my 70th birthday, the dining room filled with neighbors, friends, Teresa, Pike, and Judge Warren wearing a paper crown she claimed was legally binding. There was laughter, candles, and my own table beneath my own hands. After cake, the doorbell rang. A delivery boy held a single envelope, no return name. Inside was a cashier's check for the first restitution payment, and a handwritten note. I am learning that tears do not fix accounts. I am sorry for the lock. I am sorry for the stairs. I am sorry for becoming hungry enough to forget you were my mother. Daniel. I stood there a long time. Then I placed the check in the folder for Pike, and the note in drawer 7. Some apologies are not enough to reopen doors, but they may be enough to begin somewhere smaller. I blew out the candles. When they asked what I wished for, I told them the truth. Nothing. I already had my house back.